What is going on, my people? What is going on? It's G, and we are back in the building. Guys, we are here for another episode 4 of Top 5 Under 23 Ballers of the Week. Sorry, guys, I missed out just before the international break, but we are back, and football is obviously back. International football done and dusted. Thank God for that. And obviously, we're here to just showcase some of the best under 23 players that we've seen around the top 5 leagues out there, obviously from the Prem, La Liga, Bundesliga, Serie A, and Ligue 1. Who's impressed you guys the most? Who's been, one of the players? There was actually quite a few. This one was, again, I say this every week, to be honest with you, but this one was genuinely quite a tricky one. There were quite a few players who could have made the list. There were players I had to leave out, just taking a look at the teams, the teams they've had to face, some of the results that some of these players have obviously helped their team to gain, over the weekend. But without further ado, let's jump into it and see who makes the cut for this week. And before we do, guys, please make sure you like, please make sure you share, and please make sure you subscribe to the channel.
Now you know I'm coming through. When the growth look good on you, best believe they wanna screw now. I've been trying to climb, devil threw me in the dark. Baby, don't be insecure, you can still go make a mark like blow. Could never let them drain my soul now. Blow. Tables turning like doorknobs, wow. Blow. I think I'm about to set sail. I'm a walking, living legend, walking with my chest out. Life keep dealing me cards, I keep feeling it.
We're obviously back for another segment of the top 5 under 23 ballers of the damn week. As I mentioned before, this one was a bit tricky. It was a bit tricky. I kind of wanted to place 2 for one of the leagues, but I thought, you know what? No, let's take a look. There was a player in there you guys would obviously see in a second who I kind of just said, you know what? I've missed him out, in previous weeks and things like that. So you know what? I've got to add him in, for this week. So without further ado, let's obviously dive into it and see who we have got. So we start off in the Bundesliga. Yes, you guys can obviously see Xavi Simons. Now, obviously, Xavi Simons moved to RB Leipzig on loan from PSG. Obviously formerly of PSV, used to play for PSG, before that, so many abbreviations. Obviously played for Barcelona as well prior to that in his youth days, obviously before moving to France. Very, very good player. Very, very, very good player. I think this is a player that is kind of not a weird one, but he's a player who obviously can fill in multiple positions, Dutch international as well. He can play in the midfield. He can play up front in a false 9 position. He can play out wide. I've seen him even play in a bit in a 6 position. He can fill in a multitude of positions. And I think that's just kind of, him in a nutshell. Now, obviously on the weekend, RB Leipzig faced off against Augsburg. Obviously, if I get up the game for you guys to be able to see for yourself, just so you can see kind of what he was all about. They won that game. I believe it was about 3-0, give or take. Yeah, 3-0 to RB Leipzig. Listen, Xavi Simons was absolutely on fire. Absolutely on fire. If I just enlarge on the screen for you guys to be able to see. We'll take a look here first, actually. So obviously you guys can see here 3-0. I mean, Simons, man, he's a fantastic player, man. Fantastic. He's a player that I always wanted, Liverpool to sign, man. Because he's just one of those kind of players. The fact that he can fill in multiple positions and things like that is a massive help, and a big thing for him as well. And, playing for RB Leipzig, obviously going out there on loan. We saw Fabio Carvalho go there on loan as well. They've got a good young team. Obviously, they sold Szoboszlai to Liverpool. So people were probably kind of thinking who's going to come in there, who's going to be able to replace Szoboszlai, his goals, his assists, his impact on the team. If I'm being honest, if we're just judging it at this current moment in time, he's looking like the guy who's going to be able to do that. And I think he can get more goals. He can actually get more goals because he's a bit more of a natural person in front of goal. Not to say that Szoboszlai wasn't. Szoboszlai got so many goals, so many assists. He did absolutely fantastic. For them. Then he's a very, very good player, very good midfielder. But when I look at someone like Xavi Simons, obviously depending on, the kind of positions he might take up. Obviously in this game here, he was they were playing you can call it a 4-4-2, but he was trying to like cut in, every now and again. If we actually take a look at his heat map for the game in itself, if we can get that up. Yeah, perfect. If you get the heat map, you can see here. So as I mentioned before, he's covering in multitude of positions, obviously mostly on that right hand side, but he is cutting in as well into the middle of the park, to try and affect play, in there as well, but also dropping deep to kind of help out in the defensive phase during the game. So again, when you're looking at this multifaceted, individual, I mean, I'm looking at RB Leipzig's team at this current moment in time. If I just enlarge on the screen for you guys to be able to see. If I look at their team, they've got some decent players in there. Simakan, in defense there, very good player. Lukiva, obviously a player that, a lot of teams wanted, to fill in that kind of left centre back role. Obviously, that's where he was playing. Henrich as well, playing there at right back. In the midfield, they've obviously got Forsberg in there. He's still kicking about. And obviously Xavi Simons, Openda, signed recently as well in the summer. Very, very good player. He got himself a goal and an assist as well. He was, a very, very good player last season, I think, for RC Lens. But Xavi Simons, man, what more can we realistically say? 77 minutes in the game. He got himself a goal. He got himself an assist. Very, very good all-round performance in my personal, opinion. And I wanted to put him in there, for the previous week in episode 3. But I think Victor Boniface, the Nigerian striker, just picked him, in that kind of regards. But you look, one out of 1 shots, got accurate 3 recoveries in the game, 3 out of 3 successful dribbles. 1 big chance created, 4 out of 6 ground duels as well in the game. Again, like I mentioned before, he is such a multifaceted individual, man. And I think the sky's the limit when we look at someone, like him, created a chance in the game in itself, 46 touches in the game, 3 passes into the final third, 2 out of 2 accurate long balls. He wasn't dispossessed at all in his 77 minutes, in the game. Only dribbled past twice, won 5 duels, lost 3 of them. Aerial duels, 1 out of 2, fouled twice. As I mentioned, man, I think he's a really, really good player. And I think if RB Leipzig are going to have a good season, he's definitely going to be, he's going to be their main, I don't know. I want to say main player. I don't want to say main player, but I think he will be. I mean, this season already, 4 matches, he's got himself 4 assists, 3 goals already. That's 7 goals and assists that he's got in 4 games this season, playing only 306 minutes. I mean, that's those are really, really good numbers. I know there's a lot of stat guys out there, and those are the kind of numbers that you kind of want to see, from someone like him. So, long may it continue. Long may it continue. And as I mentioned, if RB Leipzig are going to have a good season, he's going to be one of the main reasons, for that. So he was kind of my Bundesliga pick, for this week. So, we'll have to just wait and see, how he does moving forward. Now, let's move on over to Italy. Apologies, guys, if my screen keeps freezing. I have no idea as to why it keeps doing that. I have tried to rectify the situation numerous of times, but for some reason, it is not working. So you guys are just going to, hopefully you can hear me. As long as you can hear me, that's all I actually care about. But anyways, continuing on, obviously you've got Mathias Soule. This is the team that I keep butchering their name. I mean, I've heard the commentators say the team name like 101 times, and I still keep butchering the name. Frozinian. That's the one. Frozinian. So apologies again if I'm butchering it, but who cares? I'm not here to pronounce teams correctly. I'm here to give you guys the scoop on the players. Obviously played against Sassuolo. That was an interesting game, really, really interesting game. Sassuolo actually went 2-0 up in the game. So, they had to come back from 2-0 down, and they ended up winning the game 4-2. Really, really good performance from Frozinian, should I say, sorry. Really, really good performance from them, being able to, come back in the game. And Mathias Soule, I think he put in a really, really good performance, and, Frozinian, they're becoming, I don't know, obviously it's the early part of the season, so we don't want to judge, and I don't want to say things too early because, we all know that things can obviously change, in the blink of an eye. But yeah, they're becoming one of those teams. They're one of those teams at this current moment in time, man. You might just have to watch out for them, this season, in terms of, potentially getting surprising wins. But again, it's still early on in the season. So, let's just kind of hold it. But Mathias, 90 minutes, 3 chances created, got himself an assist, 3 shots, 3 out of 8 successful dribbles, 39 out of 51 passes, 78 touches, and 8 passes into the final third. If we take a look at the game in itself, it would be nice if I can get this up a bit quicker for you guys, but taking a bit long, so I do apologize for that. Everybody, do apologize. These rookie errors. But yeah, if we take a look, obviously, at the game in itself, as I mentioned before, they were 2-0 down, had to come back, and it was such a very, very spirited display. And even watching them, in a couple of games that I've seen them, again, not a team that I heard of, but never knew anything about them, didn't know any of their players, didn't know what they were about, nothing to, and it was actually quite fun, taking a look at a team like this, because seeing them at this early part of the season and seeing the kind of things that they're, able to do, in terms of the way that they play, the way that they set up, the way that they build up, sometimes, and then they've got that quick kind of getting the ball forward, direct play when they need to, they've got the, again, Soule, he's very, very quick, so he's able to get in behind, but also can play with the ball to feet as well. Dribbling ability, close ball control. He's got all of these kind of attributes. So it's interesting. Before we had Oino, the right back, you guys can obviously see there. Again, he had a decent game, obviously helping the team to obviously get the victory in the end. I mean, Sassuolo still got Berardi. That's goodness gracious. I haven't seen Berardi, properly in ages. Formerly, I think he moved. I want to say he moved to Juventus. A couple of seasons back. Can't remember, but he's had a bit of an up and down kind of time, so to speak. But he's obviously hit back here at Sassuolo, so he's doing his thing there. Italian international as well. So interesting. But most importantly, obviously, we're looking at Mathias Soule. Argentinian player, 3 chances created in the game. His shot accuracy wasn't even really that great. He missed a big chance as well in the game, but he got himself 78 touches, as I mentioned before, 3 out of 8 dribbles, 8 passes, obviously into the final third, 3 out of 3 accurate long balls, only dispossessed once. He won 3 out of 3 tackles. I think that was one of my main things looking at him, because in the attacking sense, he was okay. I think he could have done a lot better, in the attacking sense, but obviously to help the team to victory and stuff like that, get himself an assist, I believe, get himself an assist, in the game as well. Obviously, again, contributing, but it was defensively. That's where I was really looking at him and thinking, wow, he's actually really putting in a shift down, that right-hand side, which was, testament to himself. As I mentioned, 3 out of 3 tackles, 1 clearances, 1, 2 interceptions, 7 defensive action, 8 recoveries, only dribble past once. He won 7 of his duels, lost 7. Ground duels, 6 out of 13. Aerial duels, won the one that he actually competed in. As I mentioned before, man, I just think it was a really, really decent display, from him, and obviously again helping Frosinone, to 6th place at this current moment in time, only 5 points off of Inter Milan, who have obviously had a perfect start to the season. But they are the ones that I'm looking at. Obviously, you got Lis in there as well. Obviously, just a point ahead. Napoli, they're in the same level of points as them. To be sitting there up in 6th at this current moment in time, hey, like I said, man, it's early part of the season, so we haven't even got going. I think after about 10, 12 games, that's when we start looking around the league, start seeing who's really doing things, who's really pulling away. So we don't want to get too, would I say, overexcited, so to speak. But at this current moment in time, they're doing exactly what they need to do in a general sense. If I just take this banner off, but obviously you can see here, obviously on that right hand side, and as I mentioned before, really was putting in a shift for Frosinone. So for me, he had to be my Serie A under 23 player of the week. There were other players who I felt did play decently well as well. Might have obviously scored, potentially got more assists and stuff like that. But for me, it was the shift that he put in. And again, to be 2-0 down, in that first half, especially to be 2-0 down and then to come back roaring to win 4-2. Hey, man, I've got to give you your props, man. And I think what they're doing at this current moment in time is really, really good. So, yeah, he was my pick for, Serie A, for this week. Now, We move on to the English Premier League, and again, there were a couple of players in that league, should I say, who could have been picked. There were a couple of players that I was looking at, and I was thinking to myself, could I put this guy in? Could I put that guy in? Etc. Etc. Obviously, Saka got the, I think he got the assist, I want to say, for Trossard when they beat Everton 1-0 the other day. Szoboszlai had a very, very good second half for Liverpool. But if we're just talking about all round, and one of the results, really, in my personal opinion, of the weekend was Brighton beating Manchester United, 3-1 at Old Trafford. And Tariq Lamptey, immense. The guy's playing left back, and he's originally a right back, but he has obviously played on that left hand side a couple of times, for Brighton. Absolute speedster, Ghanaian international, played 77 minutes, got himself 2 assists, 36 out of 42 accurate passes, 2 out of 5 ground duels, 3 recoveries, 4 passes into the final third, 54 touches, and 1 out of 2 successful dribbles. And I mean, that Brighton game, it was crazy. Like for me, he was really, really good, in that game. He didn't really have too much on the defensive side to kind of do anyway. Obviously, whether that's just down to Manchester United being really, really awful or whatever it may be, who cares? Ultimately, for me, the performance from Brighton as a whole, I just felt was like a top-notch performance, to be honest with you. I just generally felt like, as a team, they just played so well. And the kind of football, I love the football that they kind of play. I love the things that they try and do. They try and De Zerbi's obviously trying to implement and stuff like that. I really, really like Brighton and what they're about, to be honest with you. They're not a club who are going to spend, so much money. They're not that the money really means anything as long as they're spending it wisely, but they're also not a club who's going to be, they're quite frugal, probably, is probably the best word to say in regards to the money that they do spend. And they seem to be picking up the right players near enough all the time, so, big up to them, man. Big up to them. Obviously, looking here at Lamptey, 2 chances created. Again, this is all from left back positions. As I mentioned, the passes, 4 of those, 1 out of 2 long balls. He wasn't dispossessed once in the game. 1 out of 1 tackles, defensive actions, only 1, 3 recoveries, only dribble past twice, 2 duels, lost 3 of them, ground duels, 2 out of 5, no aerial duels in sight. But obviously, when you look here at the game in itself, I mean, Matoma didn't really have a good game. If I'm being 100% honest with you, that was kind of one of his not so great games. Do you know what I mean? In a Brighton shirt, but Lamptey, man, for me, man of what he was, man of the match, my personal opinion in that game. I mean, they've still got bloody Lallana knocking about, in that kind of positioning. But even when you look at Brighton's team, no McAllister, no Caicedo, in that team. I think Solly March not starting the game as well. 3 players who are, quite instrumental to what they were doing, last season. Not even here, going to Old Trafford. Now, obviously, I know Manchester United. They're going through whatever it is they're going through. You'd have to speak to a Manchester United fan. But I mean, you've got Danny Welbeck scoring goals at Old Trafford. You've got Rashford, you got Højlund, you got Fernandes, you got Casemiro, Eriksen, Martinez, Onana, Lindelof, Dalot as well. I mean, on paper, that's a given for Manchester United. So to see them go there and actually put in that kind of performance, for me, that's crazy. That's honestly crazy. And we can see here Brighton, sitting in 5th place at the moment. 3 points off of the top of the table. They're just continuing on from last season, to be honest with you. They really are, man. They're really putting in, a good start, for them to the season kind of thing. Obviously 1 point behind Arsenal, Liverpool and Tottenham. So it's going to be interesting, this next round of games or these next few games up until the international break and stuff like that. It's going to be interesting to see, really how Brighton do. But I mean, if they continue like this, I mean, I'm looking at the table, 1 to 6, potentially 7. They're all battling. Well, I take 2 to 7. 2 to 7 are kind of, when you look at that league table there. I'm just enlarging it for you guys. You can see, if you've seen the league table anyway. But 2 to 7, when you look at it, I mean, they're kind of all battling for like the same kind of positions, kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? The reason I say 2 to 7 is because I feel like Man City will win the league, and eventually they'll start to run away with it, unless they get injuries and stuff like that. But we'll have to just wait for that to happen. But in terms of, and they're the best team by far, in the league. So when you look at it, 2 to 7, they're all kind of battling it out for a top 4, top 5, top 6, kind of position, for this season. Going to be interesting. Obviously, you look down. Of course, I'm not going to discount a Newcastle, to be challenging for a European place this season. I know Chelsea have been duds, obviously, this season, but you just never know. You really, really and truly never know how these seasons kind of obviously, pan out. And obviously, Luton sitting there, unfortunately, at the bottom of the table. But as I mentioned, Tariq Lamptey was my pick for the Premier League Player of the Week. Now, let's move on over to La Liga. This was one of the results of the weekend, in my opinion. Probably the result of the weekend, closely followed by the Brighton game. But this one really, really was the result of the weekend. If I'm being honest, if I take a look around in terms of the players that I picked and stuff like that, this one definitely has to be up there for, the result of the weekend. And that's obviously Valencia versus Atletico Madrid. And obviously, I've got Hugo Duro here, and Valencia won 3-0. 3 goals without reply. Atletico Madrid were in the mud, completely in the mud. Absolutely poor performance from them. I don't know what it is. Don't know why. Can't really tell you, but ultimately that's just the way it kind of panned out. But when we look at Hugo Duro, the striker, 83 minutes, 2 goals, 3-on-3 shots. 2 out of 3 successful dribbles. He won 8 out of 12 ground duels, 2 passes into the final third, 32 touches, 5 out of 11 accurate passes as well in the game. And you can see he was kind of playing in those kind of positions where it was like he was just playing a little bit deeper, obviously getting himself forward as much as he possibly can, but he was playing obviously a little bit deeper to try and mix it up and link up with the midfield as best as he possibly can. And I felt like he did that extremely, extremely well. Obviously, if you take a look here a bit deeper, obviously at the stats in itself, as I mentioned, obviously 5 out of 11 accurate passes. 32 touches in the game. So he played a lot of minutes. He barely really even touched the ball. You know what I mean? 32 touches in an entire, in an entire match. That's kind of crazy. 2 out of 3 successful dribbles. As I mentioned, 2 passes into the final third. Clearances, he made 2 of those headed clearances. Defensive action, 2, 3 recoveries. Dribble pass only twice. He won 9 duels, lost 8 of those. Aerial duels only 1 out of 5, so that wasn't really good. And he was fouled 6 times in the game in itself. He put in an absolute shift. And hey, Atletico Madrid are really going to have to start patterning up. They're really going to have to start patterning up. And you can see with Valencia's scores and stuff like that, there was a lot of players who really did play well. Carrera over there at right back played, really, really well. The goalkeeper played well as well. Captain Gaia as well. I really do like him as a left back. I thought he would have moved on to, to bigger things, but obviously it's just not really panned out. Almeida there, playing just behind the striker. Perez on the right, Canos on the left, really, really good performance. But again, just like the Manchester United versus Brighton game, you look on paper at these teams and you think to yourself, well, Griezmann, Morata, Lamar, Jesus Christ, Witsel obviously playing there, Aspilicueta out there, Llorente, Oblak, you'd think that just by default, they would turn them over, but ultimately, they didn't. And obviously they've leapfrogged, Atletico Madrid, albeit Atletico Madrid have a game in hand over Valencia, but Valencia are now currently sitting in 5th position, at this current moment in time, 6 points off at the top. Real Madrid obviously flying away there. Barcelona closely followed behind. If I just get that a bit bigger for you guys. Barcelona closely followed behind, and Girona. They've got some decent players for Girona as well. I think they've got a right back. I think I've done a scouting report on him. Make sure you go to my page and check him out. But yes, looking at Valencia, I felt like it was a really, really good performance from them. And, hopefully they can kick on, because they had all them kind of problems. Obviously, the whole situation, Vinicius, but we're talking purely just football and stuff. They had quite a lot of off-field problems. And then obviously that brought onto the on-field issues that they were then having and stuff like that. So let's just see what happens, because Valencia are one of those kind of teams. They're one of those teams that you just remember from back in the day. They're one of those type of teams. I remember Valencia being fantastic under Rafa Benitez, winning the league, and doing so, doing decently well in Europe, at once upon a time. So, let's see how they can obviously do for this season. But yes, Hugo Duro is my pick for La Liga. And last but not least, we have Lorenz Assignon, the Star Rennes fullback. Obviously played this weekend against Lille, where they drew 2-2 in Ligue 1. His performance, really, really good performance again. For him at that right back. France are one of those countries. If you guys are ever looking for ballers, if you're ever looking for players, young players especially, go over to France because they have an absolute abundance, of players. 90 minutes, he got himself a goal, he got himself an assist, 2 out of 3 ground duels, 2 out of 3 aerial duels, should I say, sorry, 4 out of 7 ground duels, 33 out of 35 passes made, 2 out of 2 shots on target, and 8 recoveries, in the game. A really, really good all-action Jackson performance from that right back position. And if you take a look here, if I could quickly show you guys his heat map for the game in itself, you can see obviously up and down that right hand side, and obviously you can see here, further forward where he obviously was able to get that goal, and obviously effect play by getting himself an assist as well. But if we just take a look here, my apologies, boom, boom, boom. Cool. So yeah, if we take a look obviously at his game. Oh, no, you guys can't see that. Silly old me. Rookie mistakes, man. Rookie mistakes. But yeah, you guys can obviously see here, as I mentioned, played the full game as well. 33 out of 35, 94% passing accuracy in the game, 54 touches in the game, 2 out of 4 successful dribbles, 2 passes into the final third as well. Accurate long balls, 2 out of 2. 1 the tackle that he competed in, 2 clearances, 3 defensive actions, 8 recoveries. Was only dribble past, once in the game. 6 duels won, 4 lost, ground duels, aerial duels, only fouled once in the game. A really, really good performance. And if we're taking a look at, Stade Rennes, this season, in the early part of the season, obviously 1 point behind Lille, obviously with that point, hoped they could obviously get the win, but not at this current moment in time. I mean, they're only 1 point behind PSG. Monaco at the moment, top of that league. Brest, they're 10th. They've got 10 points, should I say, sorry. Nice sitting on 9. I mean, it's going to be that league this season, with the way that PSG are kind of behaving and the way that PSG are kind of moving. It is going to be really, really interesting. I'm quite surprised at seeing Lens at the bottom of the table after 5 games. I do think that obviously they've lost a lot of a lot of key players, that helped them to Champions League qualification last season. But in a general sense, I am quite surprised to see them there. Obviously, Lille have got Umtiti as well, Cavaliero. Oh my goodness, Jonathan David up top, Andre in midfield, Gomez in midfield, Cabella, over there on the right, Diakite, Yoro, who's a very good defender as well. I do like him. But for me, it was obviously Assignon. Yeah, really, really good all-action performance, if I'm being totally honest with you, man. And like I mentioned before, when it does come to France, they do seem to have an abundance, of players, seemingly over there. So it's going to be quite interesting to see, again, in that French league, what is going to happen. But people, we have come to the end of the show. I hope you guys obviously enjoyed that. I hope you guys were able to, take a look at some of the players, on show and things like that. You know what, I'll quickly run through them again for you guys to see. So obviously in the Bundesliga, we had Xavi Simons with a really, really good performance. Over there in Serie A, we had Mathias Soule, again, 4-2 victory against Sassuolo from being 2-0 down. Very, very good performance. One of the performances of the weekend, Tariq Lamptey helped Brighton to a 3-1 victory at Old Trafford. And then for me, the performance of the weekend, Valencia versus Atletico Madrid 3-0. Hugo Duro helping himself to 2 goals. And then obviously in League A, we had Lorenz Assignon helping Rennes to a 2-2 draw against Lille. So hopefully we can see some more new players. Some players obviously I've not really spoken about. Some teams obviously we've spoken about a couple of times, and we're starting to now see a couple of gems here and there. Hopefully we can find some more. Let me know in the comments, do you guys agree? Let me know if there was anyone you guys felt obviously that I've missed out on. Thank you guys for obviously tuning in to episode 4 of Top 5 Under 23 Ballers of the Week. Enjoy your evening. I'm G, and we are out.